Welcome back, everybody. We are here for another episode of Paranormal Normal. But, well, first things first, I'm your host, Jeremy, as always, here to try to make things seem a little more normal. Are we doing that tonight? Fuck no. Fuck no. Uh, well, folks, tonight's going to be a little different than the usual broadcast. And if I seem nervous, you'll see why in a minute. But, I have my fabulous Nickelodeon, 90s Nickelodeon loving guest, Cyndi Maurer, back on, PhD, psychic, and so much more. Because, you know, I've wanted to do a live reading of myself on this show for a long time. And when Cyndi offered, I couldn't say no. And because we have such chemistry already, I feel like she's the right person to do it. So, fuck it. Welcome back, Cyndi. And, folks, yeah, I don't know what's going to be said, obviously. So there's nothing. I hide nothing in my life though from you guys, so you should expect nothing to be outrageous. I've never committed a crime in my fucking life. So there you go. I don't do anything wrong. Okay, no, debatable. But I have not done anything very wrong in my life. Put it that way. Because, I mean, who hasn't done wrong shit? But I never done anything really wrong in my life, so there's nothing I really have to hide. And maybe we can find out some stuff about well, I will say, first and foremost, Cyndi cannot predict the future. So maybe we can get some insight into where this podcast is going to go in the next 2 years, maybe. And maybe we can get some insight into how my life's going to go in the next 2 years. I'm hoping to win the lotto, but come the fuck on. But fuck it. Let's have fun with this. Let's have fun with this. I am giddy as all fuck right now, and I just want to have fun with it. So let's go. Welcome back, Cyndi. It's so glad to have you back, actually.
Thank you. And thank you for taking me up on the offer. I love reading people, and sometimes I think showing is better than talking about it. I'll just give like the brief, like any client gets this information before they have a session, which is everything is made of energy. So any question is allowable. The energy is set to your higher self's level of discernment. So I theoretically will not take you past what you're ready to hear, probably already know. Like you said, I can't tell the future. We have free will, so we can talk about where the podcast is headed, but how that unfolds will be a reflection of your free will. And the last thing I'll add is where you are on your spiritual journey will kind of determine what information comes in. For you, we might do some off-planet stuff. We will probably do past lives and spirit guides, but because you are so open, there's a high chance that there'll be more of like the woo than say my clients that like are CEOs. During the session, my eyes are closed. You can leave yours open. You can close yours, entirely up to you. And it's quite collaborative. So I will ask if I can clarify anything or if there's questions about anything. And the session will begin with me just asking for your full name after I set the energy. Do you have any questions for me before we get started?
Other than the fact that I probably going to keep my eyes open because I have a feeling I'm going to need a few cigarettes during this. So, but other than that, no, let's get the show on the road. I got no questions as of yet.
Awesome. And it's already recorded, so I don't even have to worry about hitting record. And typically the sessions are about 50-ish to 60 minutes. If we need to go shorter, just like be sure to let me know. Otherwise, I'll keep an eye on time too.
That's the perfect time for the show, as always. So
awesome. Okay, let me just take a minute to set the space. All right, Jeremy, when you're ready, if you could say your full legal name for me a few times, including any middle names.
Jeremy Wayne Bryant.
So to start with, I'm just going to say hello to you as a spirit. I'll start everything or a lot of things with color. And this is just a snapshot of where you are. I do not subscribe to color theory. So color in your space will be different than color in my best friend's space. And as a spirit tonight, your vibration is like a blue with a little bit of yellow in it. And the blue vibration looks like kind of what you step into when you go to podcasts. So when I look at this blue, it looks like something very comfortable to you, something that activates and opens up your throat chakra, really invites in your wisdom and lets you kind of take a step back of just leaning into that knowingness so you can hear what the person in front of you is saying, but also like respond quickly without having to go through that whole like processing. The yellow is what I saw you in earlier today when I was setting up my day. I always say hello to all the things I'm doing that day, including any readings and any clients, and in this case, podcasting. And you're still a little bit in that yellow. I suspect you're not going to go into that yellow after the podcast. I think we can look for next step color towards the end of the session for you. This yellow looks like a combination of where you're just a little bit tired, that collective energy. We are doing this on the eve of the election, that collective energy, you are in combating it just like the rest of us. The other thing I see in the yellow is the daylight savings energy. You do have tiny humans, so there's that level of exhaustion. But underneath all of that like fatigue, exhaustion energy, there's just this curiosity that I think I will always associate with you from the first episode, which is you just look at things a little differently. And this yellow is a really good vibration of you looking at things a little differently. And when I say that, what I see happens oftentimes for you is you are pulling across your spirit's history, not just the present time experiences you have had. I also just want to say, you rely really, really heavily on your knowingness. And I think in the last episode, we talked a little bit about school and everything. And I don't remember if we talked about like just having the answer and then having to work backwards. But one thing I see as one of your superpowers is just pulling information out of thin air and just really saying hello to that. It's a psychic skill, but it's also, in my opinion, a superpower. I'll pause there. Anything I just shared that I can clarify for you?
Not really. I mean, I actually voted by mail about a month ago, so the election holds
Awesome.
no weight over me. I mean, hopefully it goes the way I think it should go, but
I think we're all hoping it goes the way we think it should go. Hopefully we're all in the
I
same boat of that.
I mean, I'll say it didn't go the way I wanted to go last time, so we'll see how this one goes. But
We'll see how this one goes then. Yeah, and that election energy, everyone's being impacted by it. Even people that can't vote because they're tiny humans, or people that have already voted, it's still definitely having an impact on everyone. So that makes sense to me that you're like, I already voted, but it's still in the air. Okay. So from here, we can go into whatever area of life you'd like some communication on. And if you're not sure, I can kind of take a look around your aura and kind of see what's bright and shiny.
fuck it, I'm a gambling man. Let's see what's bright and shiny.
Awesome. Okay. So let me just take a little bit of a look. So first thing I'm saying hello to is just the podcast itself and the arena within which we're sitting. That's pretty separate from you, but it looks like there's value in kind of setting the energetic stage. And the way that with my eyes closed, it kind of looks is like, I feel a little bit like we're on a stage and there's a lot of people in the audience. So I'm just going to move everybody outside the actual reading space so they can actually be the audience. There we go. So first place I'm being called is really into your creative space. This is going to be in your aura, your personal bubble. And there's a big anticipation that I see that you're having towards how you creatively express. It does look related to the podcast, but it also looks related to other expressions of creativity you have, especially in a more personal way, in a less public way. And it looks as though you have been kind of waiting to get to a certain point of comfort in things like the podcast, in things like your family space, in how you want to show up in the world. And now it looks like as you are looking at having another tiny human come into the world, as you are looking at what your role as the dad is and is going to continue to evolve into, there's a little bit of a, let's make sure we don't lose you in the process. I do see a lot of it, and I believe you do stuff with music. I do see a lot of it has to do with music, but then there's also like some pictures around this of you like painting either a giant mural or like doing something with color and just giving yourself this permission to be messy. And it's this picture of you like in the middle of a white room and you've painted the walls bold colors and you're standing in front of an orange one and you're kind of looking at it wondering like if you take all this paint that's around you and you just randomly dip brushes and then you start dancing around, what is that going to look like? And when I say hello to it a little bit more, it really does look like a couple things. One, the way in which you create does rely pretty heavily on what I would say is more vibration and less about aesthetics and less about the appeal to others and much more about what you experience in the process of creating, whether it is this podcast or something else. The second thing I see in all this color is there are parts of you, especially prepubescent into that first state of puberty, that looks like had a ton of invalidation and a ton of pain that's like wanting to come back out and be like, hey, don't forget about me. And I want this and I want to be seen. And as you're coming up on this next big set of experiences in your life, that pressure looks like it's starting to build a little bit of like, it's an unwarranted, ungrounded fear that somehow you're going to lose yourself. I don't see that being the case. I don't see that you even as a spirit see that to be the case. It's more an external pressure and an external fear that's kind of being placed in your space. And that's where I see you being like, okay, well, if I just plan these creative experiences, then I won't lose myself. But the reality is like, you're not going to lose yourself anyway. And then I will also just say your kiddos are in this picture too. There's something about co-creating with your kids that really is giving yourself a lot of healing as well as empowering the tiny humans in your life. And then probably not even just your children, honestly, as well as empowering the tiny humans in your life to see who they are and how they want to show up and how much they can offer the world. And then I'll pause after I say this last piece. Behind all of this, I just see you writing. I see you writing longhand. I don't know if you started a manuscript when you were younger and it's like in a drawer somewhere, or if like you started doing something creative that has to do with writing, but there's something about the writing process that looks really valuable to you. And even as I say that, I also see where when you're ready and wanting to take your psychic skill set to the next step, automatic writing or channeled writing looks like it would be very available to you because you're as a spirit very like adept at just shifting into that knowingness channeled space and like letting that information come through. I'll pause. Can I clarify? Is there anything that comes up as I share all of that?
I mean, I never have wanted to paint in my life. I never have. I hate painting. I hate painting like houses and bedrooms, like with a passion.
That's
Um,
fair. That's totally
I,
fair.
I I never have been a painter in my life, and the fact that you see me painting and dancing while painting is it made me giggle. I will not
Good,
lie.
good. It looks like a playful, silly way, and it doesn't have to be a one-to-one, like, it can be metaphorical. Also, take what resonates, drop what doesn't, but it can also just kind of be, like, a reminder that not everything you do has to be, like, super productive or, like, be super polished, and I don't know people that like painting rooms. I do not like painting rooms, I'm with you.
And I mean, I'm not gonna lie. The writing part is kind of ironic because synchronicities and all. I was supposed to have a meeting earlier tonight with a company about writing a book, but
Oh, okay.
they actually canceled on me because I'm not far enough in the stages for them yet.
Like, far enough in the writing stage or far enough in the engagement in the world stage?
They didn't really clarify, but I'm assuming the first one, but maybe both.
Okay.
I don't really know.
I know some publishers, have really started looking at metrics like what's your follower and engagement rates and all that stuff, so
Uh, this company almost seemed more like a scam to me because they were. One of the questions was like, how much money you have to put into it.
ooh, yeah, yeah. Okay, so
So
that's a
don't
giant
know.
no? Okay.
I wasn't too sad it got canceled, but I mean either way.
No. What are you writing? Are you writing a manuscript, book? Like, what is it?
I've been teasing about this in my show for a while, but I think I'm gonna write a book on what I've learned in my world views of the paranormal based on the show.
It it's already written. Like, I don't know how else to describe it. As you say that, I just see these different snapshots. It quite literally like opens up to a book in the chapter page, and there's like a little Polaroid like picture there. It's not actually a Polaroid, nor is it even a rendition of a Polaroid, but something similar to that. And then there's two different things that it looks like you're looking at. One highlighting different guests and what they've taught you, like almost like you going into your archive of what you have learned, not just through the podcast, but in general. And then to going like almost like which are the standout episodes and what was like that key takeaway. And that looks like kind of what you have been doing as a spirit. But then when I look at what you're wanting to do, it looks a little bit more concrete and linear, of like whether each theme, each chapter is thematic, or it's like an evolution of your understanding of the world and how your story has created the framework for you to understand the paranormal. That's where I see you kind of starting to look. I would also agree that that company does look a bit scammy. I see their energy. I'm not going to ask you who they are, but I can see their energy, and it looks like they're effective at what they do, but they do put a lot of financial pressure, it looks like, on new authors. It also looks like they've got like resources that they're trying to sell you on. I think I will just say there are other publishers that would be a better fit for this particular project.
Yeah, I wasn't even looking for a publisher yet. I wouldn't want to talk to a publisher until I had it written, at least the first draft of it. But and it's funny. You actually just basically laid out the book in the way I was thinking about doing it. But that's fucking awesome. But yeah, and as far as the manuscript thing you mentioned earlier, I did write a play in high school that was based on the Grand Illusion album by Styx. But it was right around the time this movie Envy came out, and I basically was writing the script to that movie, so I kind of stopped and threw it out. But
Might be worth pulling out and just seeing if there's anything there you want to play with.
oh, I literally threw it out. But yeah.
Oh, just kidding then. Okay. Might be something to just completely let go of then. Any questions about kind of what you're writing for the show, or any like questions about what direction
Yeah,
you're looking at?
I- I'm kind of curious to see what direction this podcast will take in the. I know you can't predict the future, but what
You
direction
can
this
look at the
podcast?
energy though. Like I can be like, this
Yeah,
is what your energy looks like.
has my time, my 2.5 years of doing this podcast, and the 2 years of doing my other podcasts been worth it? Will it be worth it?
What's the name of the other podcast?
Maniacal Music Musings.
You really do enjoy your alliterations.
I do.
I'm here for it. I'm a fan. I'm a super fan of that. Do they often intersect? Do you like pull from both of them?
Only guess sometimes, but
Okay.
not often. Two separate
Right.
entities in a way.
Yeah. Right now, it looks like they share a zipper. I don't know how else to describe it. So it looks like there is some level of overlap. And when I look at where both are going, they're going in completely different directions. So if you were like, yes, there's a lot of overlap, I would say the picture showing that like perhaps you're going to start to parse those out. But what you just described makes sense to what I'm seeing. So when I look at Paranormal, the New Normal podcast, what I see is these other things you want to start to incorporate, this thing that you're wanting to write. I see other forms of media and technologies you've been like kind of playing with, like, and that looks a little bit more like collaborations, and maybe that's going on other people's shows and doing things live. Maybe that's more engagement of like bringing up your audience in the middle of an interview. But there's something about the engagement with your audience in Paranormal that really looks like it's on the cusp of really flourishing. I see a timeline there of like an expectation of a little bit after the new year that is being a bit dictated by like the tiny human that's coming. So like just throwing that out there, that some of the timelines I'm looking at are in response to the tiny human. And what I see with Paranormal is there's a lot of interest. There's a lot of interest from beings without bodies about what you share on this show. So like spirits, they're not necessarily guides. Some do look off planet. Some of them look very much of this universe. And there's a lot of support available to you as you look at the next 2 years of this podcast. I wouldn't say that for Paranormal, you are done. Like I would not say, like I would say if we're going to talk about the bell curve, I would say you haven't hit the plateau of its current arc. And like, you're kind of looking at how much more time, money, and energy do you want to invest? And like, what do those metrics and thresholds need to look like to feel like, okay, I'm doing something important? This, unseen support that's available to you should you choose to invite it to be of support. Looks like it can help you bring in some guests that will take you to the next level through their exposure, almost like it's time for you to go back to like your original, like whether you actually wrote this out or it was just in your head, your original like brainstorming idea of like who's the craziest person you could ever imagine getting on your show, what's the craziest topic you'd ever want to talk about, what do you really want to expose that's like super super big. And that's what I see you really wanting to do in the next 18 months of the show. And it's mostly like, it's not to create a splash, but it's to garner a lot more attention. And then behind that is where I see, well, no, similar, like same timeline as that. I see like this book that we just talked about that you're wanting to write, but there's more to it. Like multimodal media is the best way to describe it. Almost like there's these different interactions of like a book, of digital technology, whether that's like you also have a website and it's a little bit like Save the Bees, where it's, you know, a bit of a treasure hunt or something of that nature. But there's something about it just not being a book and it just not being a podcast, like the interaction there. And then this unseen support, the parts that are off planet or don't come up from this universe, also known as like alien or ET, depending upon which energy we want to talk about and like what the context is. That part is what looks most interesting to you right now. Like it looks like you are very, very keen on understanding things not of this universe. And so there's kind of just like a couple different spirits that kind of come in, see where you are, see if you're ready, see what your development has been, and then if there's any way for them to kind of get the right person in front of you or like get you across to the right person. So there's quite a bit going on energetically for paranormal. The other thing I'll say is the attention on the podcast, I see where it's stalled a little bit. It's of nothing to do with you and everything to do with what's going on in the world the last few months. I see that stalling really diminishing in the next couple months and coming back into the growth you have been expecting and the exponential growth that you are really ready to have. From a capacity perspective, I would say you are very ready for this level of visibility and for this expertise that you're culling. And that's part of what the book is. The book almost looks like the culmination of your acceptance that you are in fact an expert on the paranormal, even though maybe you haven't done all the courses or you haven't done all the trainings or you haven't had all the experiences. You have collected so much information that your expertise is right there. And that's what I see as like the next phase of paranormal, and it comes in conjunction with the book. I'll pause. Can I clarify any questions coming up, anything coming up as I share that?
No, I mean, I ain't gonna freaking lie. You got me. The whole original concept thing got me going back trying to think of what the hell that even was. I mean, this, well, I guess the original concept
And it
would
might
just
just
been,
be the guest. Like, was there like a crazy person that you were like, I really want to interview them?
it's actually funny you say that because I was going to mention I've had a couple of my dream guests on already in the first 100 episodes. So
Congratulations.
they're just very accessible, friendly people. But I've had a couple of them on, and I mean, get them on again, yeah, maybe. But I mean, it's the original concept was more on the paranormal side, less on the spiritual side. But this podcast became more of a spiritual podcast. So maybe that's what it is. I mean, those guests are hard to find for sure, especially ones that can fill an hour. But I mean, maybe not though. Maybe not.
Maybe
Maybe
not. Maybe it's also time for you to get out in the field a little bit and have a little bit of experiences of the paranormal for yourself.
with the new edition coming, that's going to be hard. But yeah, I
That
mean,
might be on the other side of this part. That might be like 3 to 5 years down the lane.
I mean, it's possible. As I get older, that's definitely a possibility. But we'll see.
Yeah. Any concerns around the podcast? Any specific questions? Yeah.
No, I mean the fact that you said it's stalled because of current events, I kind of knew that already, and I mean you're 100% right. I am 100% ready for whatever visibility may come in the near future. And it's funny that you say it's going to grow in the next few months when I'm going to be on a hiatus and not actually filming live episodes anymore, but just releasing episodes I have recorded already and sharing them out. That's That's funny you say that, but
That tracks because the lean out is real. So you have put so much energy and attention into the podcast that now the podcast gets to go do its own thing and gets to grow. It's kind of like you really like managed the soil, you made sure the water was the proper amount, etc. And then we go into winter and we let the plants do what like they need to do. We let the potatoes grow, we let the garlic grow. And that's kind of what I see is like you're doing a lean out, letting the entity that is the podcast that has been created in the process go do its own thing. Go do what I like to call astral marketing. Go find these people. Okay, cool. You've interviewed all the people you wanted to interview from round one. Fantastic. Maybe it's not going back to the drawing board. Maybe it's kind of going to the corner of the room and asking yourself, like, what's the next natural step? But that lean out with the new edition coming, it's what will it's what will allow the podcast to grow so much more quickly, because when we put attention on stuff all the time, it's like watching a pot boil, like it never seems to boil. Does that make sense?
it makes sense. And well, before we continue, I should acknowledge my guest as always. But thank you, Ward, for watching. Hello. Same for you, Pam, and thank you for sharing it out. And Pam, I think that Cyndi actually just asked the same thing in a way. Well, she kind of said something along the same lines. And music has, I've never been a musician, and I mean, as much as I would love to be in a band or something, I mean, part of me thinks I could sing, but part of me knows I'm wrong. Um, but
Fair, fair.
I, I have never been a musician. And no, new intro. I haven't thought about a new intro for either. I mean, I would love to actually make a video intro for each show, but I have no skill to do that, and I would need to collaborate with someone who knows how to do that because I have no. I made one video in my life for another podcast, and it was not that great, so I don't have the time or patience for that. But I don't know, and maybe it was something to do with the new intro. I thought about that, and I may use part of the hiatus to work on that. We'll see. As she said, I have a new edition coming, and I don't know. It's my first new edition from birth, and I don't really know what to expect or what to how my time schedule is going to be during that. So I imagine a lot of sleep. I imagine a lot of sleep because I'm only getting 2 weeks off work, so I imagine a lot of sleep and a lot of lost sleep. But we will see. 100%. And everybody watching, all 16 of you, freaking awesome. Love you all. But for us, I will be holding comments. Will be sparing on this one as this is not actually like an interview, so I don't want to keep interrupting with comments. But please feel free to put them out there, and I will respond to them when I can.
Fantastic. Thank you. My eyes are closed, so I can't even see any of them. So
Oh, it's all
welcome,
good.
everyone. Last thing I want to say about paranormal. If you want more communication from that off-planet support and that interdimensional support, your sleep space looks like the easiest way to get it. So that might be setting an intention before you go to bed and then just like making note of anything if you wake up in the middle of the night or any dreams you have. Alternatively, there's a million, if not trillion, meditations that would help invite that type of energy, and any spirit guide meditation would easily help it. I'm unfamiliar with all of the species that are showing up. Like, it's not any ET or alien energies that I have worked with before. So I don't have like it's, it's a gray, in which case, why are you working with them? Or it's an Arcturian, in which case, like, they're very supportive, or it's a unicorn. Like, but it just looks like the quickest way to facilitate with them is in either deep trance or in your REM cycle, if that all tracks for you.
Well, considering I'm gonna be sleeping a lot more in about a couple weeks probably, then
You did just say
yeah.
that. I got a figure down for it from the moment I saw them, so I totally just put two and two together. Okay, so paranormal looks good. It looks like it's time to do the lean out. Tell me a little bit about the music podcast, because that one I'm less familiar with.
It is co-hosted by me and my best friend I made through podcasting, and Chancy Greif, and we basically have an album challenge show, as I like to call it, where a guest brings an album that means something to them, or an album they love, or even an album they are on in some way, because we've had a lot of artists on, and basically we bring 2 albums of our own, and every episode we talk about 3 albums, and we do bracket specials every other week for different topics. But
So like if I was on there, I could be like, this is the album that is my soundtrack to life, and this means a
uh,
lot to me. And you'd be like, okay, cool. This is like whatever.
yeah, basically we listen. Everybody has to listen to all 3 albums and pick a top 5 songs, and we would tell you straight. We would tell you straight off, like, whether we love your album, whether we just kind of like it, or whether it's just complete garbage. We hold back nothing. We hold back nothing.
What a beautiful concept for a podcast, by the way. I, as a music lover, now need to make sure I look that up. So just a personal aside. So a little different than paranormal. The music podcast, that looks a lot more like a passion project between you and your co-host, and something that brings a lot of joy for both of you, and something that really gets both of you thinking in a different way. I see where when you're listening to these different albums, whether you've heard it 1,000 times before, it's the first time, like you are really showing up in a full present way to make sure that you are giving it a solid chance. Now, I'm going to ask a personal question because I think this is always such a great debate topic. When you listen to music, do you listen more to the lyrics or more to the instruments?
Depends on what it is, I'd have to say.
Okay,
But
that's fair.
I mean, both. Most of the time, both. Because I mean, unless it's one of Chancey's garbage albums where you can't understand what they're saying.
Fair, fair. I only ask because I always like to ask people, because I pay attention to the lyrics more than I pay attention to the instruments. So aside from it being a passion project, second thing I see is there's not a really clear picture on where y'all want this podcast to go. Like, do you want it to be picked up by a big network? Do you want it to stay kind of fully in the control that the two of you have? What's the visibility? So it just looks like, I don't want to say y'all fell into this podcast. That's not an accurate way to describe the energy, but it looks more like a passion project that is starting to come into a more grounded space of, do we want to keep it in this passion space because it brings us joy, or do we want to really look at this and consider if this might be a financially viable option for one or both of us down the line? What I will say is there's a lot of attention on it and a lot of interest, because it does look like y'all don't discriminate on like the type of music, y'all don't discriminate on who the guests are. Like you said, there's like a no holds bar, like that album is complete crap and I don't know why it's your favorite album. Like it's a very like candid show, and so there's definitely a lot of curiosity around it. It looks like it has not even begun to hit its organic threshold of being seen or heard through referral or like people sharing it or like social media or anything. And that's where I just see it more in the passion space and less in the, oh, we actually want to turn this into a business. Now, that doesn't mean it can't be both, because I would say paranormal is edging more towards both. Like I see so much of your passion in it, but the music one definitely looks much more passion based. Do y'all have a direction that you're wanting to take it, or have like a 1 year, 3 year goal for it?
I mean, it's kind of in the same as you saw Paranormal. It's kind of in the middle of both roads. But I mean, we'd love to turn it into something. I mean, I can't speak for Chancey personally, but I'd love to turn it into something profitable at some point. And I mean, as I would with every podcast I'm part of, because why the hell not? But I also, it is a passion project. I mean, it was just, I wanted to start another podcast. One of my former co-hosts on another show said they wanted to start a music podcast. I'm like, you know what? That's not a bad idea, but that guy's too busy all the time. So I'm like, everybody says me and Chancey have a great vibe together because we kind of play off each other. So I'm like, let's go with it. And that's kind of where it started. And I mean, everything you said about it's right. Every the way you described it is 100% right. I mean, we've been called the Howard Stern of podcasting, but
That's not the podcast that looked up. Like when you say that, it totally resonates. I see why that's what people say. I'm thinking of two other podcasts, and I'll have to look them up and message you offline later. And I apologize, I just don't remember the name of either of them. But one thing that looks like a high level of visibility, it looks like there's a lot of biteable pieces of content. So if you're not already putting it on Instagram or TikTok or YouTube Shorts, it looks like getting some of those biteable pieces, like it doesn't look like it would be hard for it to go quote unquote viral. So
I,
if you are already doing that, that's probably coming down the line. And if you're not already doing that, this is the invitation to do that.
I was doing that for a bit, but then life got busy and I didn't have a chance to sit there and clip out videos anymore.
There is AI software that'll do it for you. That's actually really, really good. But we can talk about that offline if it's of interest. But that just,
And
I wish I could remember either. Okay, so I'll tell you the premise. One is these two guys, and they kind of just shoot the shit. And I want to say the word yard is in the podcast title, and I just can't remember. And then the other is an ex-convict who basically invites on other ex-convicts and criminals and like just talks about how they got away with stuff. And like they're mostly white collar criminals and like goes into the incarceration system and all this other stuff. And he's just got these biteable pieces that vibrationally are very similar to what you and your co-hosts do. And so it just looks like the audience is there, and now it's just like, how do you beat the algorithm? Which I don't know how to beat the algorithm, otherwise I would tell you.
yeah, I don't know either of those podcasts off the top of my head, but I mean,
Yeah, I'll look them
it
up.
definitely, when I was posting them out there, they definitely were getting a lot of reactions on TikTok and Instagram. So,
And might be like a worthwhile place to consider like delegating it out and like hiring somebody, whether it's a teenager that you can do like minimum wage with or like overseas. It just that it looks like it wouldn't take much to kind of farm that out to someone else.
interesting.
If you were willing to give up the creative freedom, which is definitely part of the challenge.
If it led to something, it's a possibility.
Yeah. Any specific questions around that one, or any concerns, or any
Okay,
curiosity?
actually, question about paranormal new normal that I've always said I don't want to do it. I might have even said on an episode you were on, I don't remember, but I say it on a lot of episodes. I always say I don't want to do episodes solo on my paranormal show or my music show, technically, really either, because I feel like they would garner no attention and they would just be time wasted. And I mean, that may just be me being a hater on myself, but I kind of am curious to what energy is around that.
I think it's you being a hater on yourself, because in the first episode that I was with you, you had made a comment that really stuck out to me about how you've not had these experiences because you want it so much. And I 100% disagree with that. And it's the same energy here, which is at the bottom line, it's a not good enough energy. There's an energy in your space that says you are not enough, you are not good enough. Now, that is not a present time energy. That is not how I see where you are in present time. But there is energy that has built up from conception to present time of like somehow you're not interesting enough or you don't deserve it or something of that nature. When I look at paranormal, I look at your audience, and this may not add up to 100%. And I ask your audience, like, what are you showing up for? Are you showing up for Jeremy? Or are you showing up for the guests? I see over 80% show up to hear what you're going to say, what wacky question you're going to ask, what pattern you see, what connection. When I look at that energy and I ask, like, if you were to do your own show in paranormal, I immediately see almost more interest in like some of your stories, and or like when people have interviewed you for their podcast, like there's a lot of interest in hearing your perspective, which is why I think your book is already getting so much energetic attention. And I personally would be curious like what that would look like. I think it is challenging to do a podcast by yourself in general because there's nobody to play off of, and you kind of have to think a little bit more ahead of time. And as someone that loves to improv, I find that to be a little bit more challenging. So I would imagine that part of this energy is also like it would be more work, whether that's true or not. In general, I see it being quite successful. And there's a couple avenues you're kind of looking at as a spirit. One is paralleling what you want to do with the book. And whether it's like a reflection or a return to old concepts or ideas, or it's, kind of coalescing all your ideologies of how you see the world and what you truly believe in and what you don't actually believe in and where you need your evidence, where you don't. The other thing I see is you giving yourself space to, and this piece is not for now. This piece is very much in the future because new edition. but you kind of going out and doing some exploration yourself, whether that's visiting local places that are supposedly haunted or have paranormal activity, or like actively going around the world, like that energy is available to you, and the finances look like they would be available to you in the future if you were like, I want to go travel to California and I want to go to the Winchester Mystery House because that's where I went this summer. And it just looks like it would become available for you. In general, the only challenge I really see is just where you had already decided that that's not something you wanted to do, and now you're working through the fact that you might be changing your mind. So I will give you permission to change your mind, and you can change it 100,000 different times. And in a week's time, you can be like, I will never do it again. And in 5 weeks' time, you can be like, I'm absolutely doing a solo episode. But that's a lot of what I see you working through is like that permission to acknowledge the growth you've had, and that again, you are an expert in this field and you're getting ready to like really own it. It just doesn't have the same, like you don't have a certificate of completion to say, or like a diploma to say like, look what I have done, but very available to you. And I don't think you would run out of things to say either.
Interesting. I would be lying if I said all that didn't cross my mind before. But uh, and okay, well, Pam actually asked if you're a medium, and I don't want to assign titles to people that aren't things, so I'll let you answer.
Um, it depends on how we define medium. If we are talking about a medium as someone that speaks to the dead, yes. If we talk about medium as somebody that channels, yes. It's not my personal preference of a title, but how most people define it, yes, it falls under my skill set.
Well, there you go, Pam. But all right. I mean, yeah. And as far as for all my listeners, if you are listening 8% from me, well, damn, thank you. Wasn't expecting that number, but I always put more attention on the guest than me because I figured it was more about the guest. But and as far as the paranormal investigating goes, I've always considered myself too much of a chicken shit for that. But um,
I got you. I'll get you set up to be able to do it. I'll give you the tools.
I don't doubt I can do it.
You can.
It's also the not experiencing thing that like makes me want waste my time. But maybe that's what needs to happen for me to experience things.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe I don't know. We'll see. And I mean, if the finance part comes true in the future, then fuck it.
You're not gonna have a choice. I think it would be helpful if you defined what your paranormal experience you would like to have. Like not right now, but in general, like do you want
Yeah.
to see something? Do you want to hear something? Do you want to channel something and realize you're channeling it? Like
Oh,
what would that be?
I want it all. Fuck. But I've always wanted it all. But
Fair, super fair. You can have it all.
we can hope. But all right. Where's the next shiny bright area? I kind of like to play the lotto here.
Yeah, let's take a look. You want to pass life, Fred?
I know it's something I've always wanted done, so why not?
Because that's what's bright and shiny. So when I ask people for their name, it solidifies into a symbol. And then when I'm looking for past lives, I'm looking at the grounding cord of that symbol, which is made up of the past life rings. And I'm looking at 2 past lives. I'd like to read 2 for you. If you're open, we'll start with 1. If you don't want the second one read, we don't have to. But the energy that I throw for them to light up is what is relevant to the person in front of me right now and where their story is. I do have some clients that are like, I want you to read a past life in Egypt, or I want you to read a past life where I'm a warrior. I can do that. It's not always as interesting to me. So the first past life I'm saying hello to vibrates at like a sapphire blue, and then from one perspective, it almost like looks a little black. It's like a very, very dark blue. So give me just a moment to open this one up. First thing I see is you're in a male body. It opens up and it looks like it's like the tundra, or like a place like, yeah, I'll just say it's like the tundra because it's just snow or sorry, ice all around you. And it does look like you are what at one time we would call an Eskimo. And I apologize because I don't think that's PC language, but that's the best word I have for the moment. And you've got a bunch of furs on. You're quite stout. You're probably in your 30s. You've got your sled with you and you're kind of in the middle of nowhere. Like I don't see anybody else with you. You don't even have dogs with you. You're kind of just trudging along. And when I rewind a little bit to kind of see where you started, it looks almost like you're going on a quest of some sort, or there's a word for this, a rite of passage. It looks like you're going into a rite of passage. And when I fast forward out of this like very bleak, like you're in the middle of nowhere, it looks like you're out there for what I would say is probably at least 3 days. It's hard to tell because it does look like it's the middle of summer and like the sun doesn't go down. But when you return, you're returning to a village. And when I look at what you're returning into, it does look like in this lifetime, you were like the equivalent of a shaman or the oracle or the wise man for your community. Again, I'm going to say you're probably between 30 and 34 in this lifetime. Does not look like you have a wife, does not look like you have kids. And what looks like had happened is the previous like oracle for your community, and it's multiple groups creating this community that looks like y'all come together for different experiences like the solstices throughout the year and like have those big celebrations, also like to find a partner and have children and all that fun stuff. It looks like between the last event and the next event, the community oracle passed and you were kind of in line for succession for it. And when I look at what you were doing out on the tundra, like quite literally by yourself, it looks like a lot of what you were doing was trying to invite in the wisdom of your people. And those 3 days that I see, I would say probably about 60% of it, you were in a trance like vibration, but you weren't always sitting still. It's like to keep yourself alive, you would do like these different body movements, but you would very much be in trance where you were not in your body. Your spirit was very much like, body, take care of yourself. I'm over here communing with my ancestors. When you got back to the community, it looks like you still were a little bit uncertain if you were the right one. Like even prior to going into it, I can see some what we would call imposter syndrome. In terms of a time frame, I'm going to put this easily like before the 19th century, so before the probably like early 1800s. That's just the sense I'm getting. There is nothing that I can see that gives me any sort of indication. Like there's no modern or clothing or like lamps. Like it's all oil lamps, so it's hard to like identify clearly like the time frame. But when you get back from your quest to ascend basically into this oracle space, it looks like you still have some confusion on whether you're the right person or not. And there is a specific area, like I want to say it's a room, but that's like not quite the right word. I want to say it's a tent. That's not the right word. It's not an ice. Oh my gosh, whatever the igloo. I was like, whatever those things are called. But there's a space you went into to kind of go back into this deep trance to like get verification. And there's a lot of pride that you worked in that lifetime to kind of ascend to this oracle. When I fast forward the past life a little bit more, it looks like it took you a good couple years to really feel confident, because your job wasn't just to like be the advisor to these communities. Your job was also to forecast different migration patterns. Your job was to decide who was marrying who, or confer with the tribes people or the head of the tribes of who was supposed to confer or marry to whom. Like you had a lot of responsibility at a very, very young age. And it was expected, it looks like in this lifetime, that you would have actually done an apprenticeship. You would have gone on that quest. You would have come back, done an apprenticeship, and then gone on a second quest. But because the person had died, there was nobody there to advise you. So you kind of jumped into it. When I take a step back and I look at this lifetime and I look at where you are right now, there's two dominant themes I see. First and foremost, it's that communing with your ancestry. In present time, I wouldn't say it's your genetic ancestry of like your biological parents and your family of origin. I would say here, it's the spiritual or energetic ancestry. So like across space and time as a spirit, all the different communities and cultures and planets that you have lived on, that's what I see you communing with. And even like, as I say that, I see where some of these species of off-planet entities that were showing up for paranormal are actually because you have past lives off planet with these different groups. The second thing I see is that trust that you had to develop, that confidence, that belief, that overcoming of what we now would call the imposter syndrome. You have pulled that vibration of just empowerment and deep trust for so long from this past life that there's a part of you that's like starting to recognize you either need to pull it from a different past life or start to have your spirit work with your mind to kind of adjust how you're seeing that ownership of information. And in present time, what I see is that's really where you're at. You're ready to just stand in the middle of the stage and say, this is what I'm an expert on. And here are the 5 things. And like, I can talk about these things for hours on end. And here's why I think I'm an expert. And this past life really set you up for success in this lifetime, which is why you've pulled from it for so long. And then a minor theme I see is what I've kind of already said earlier, which is your ability to just use your knowingness, which is in your crown chakra. And it's just the ability to pull information out of thin air. When I look at that past life, that was a lot of how you had to basically like become an apprentice yourself of yourself. Since you did not have anybody to study with, you kind of had to like have these internal conversations and belief in yourself. And I see that replicated now, especially as you're going into this next chapter with a new edition and trying to figure out what life is going to look like and doing this lean out here and putting energy over there. Anyway, I'll pause. Can I clarify anything from that past life? Does it make sense? Any questions about it?
It actually makes a lot of sense. And shit, I was a shaman. I'll take it. But Pam did ask if you do numerology as well.
I do not do numerology. It is outside my scope of memorization.
Ah, well, question answered. But no, that past life actually it makes sense in a way. I mean, not a not an ethnicity I ever saw myself being part of, honestly, just because it doesn't line up. But
Yeah,
I'll,
that
I'll,
makes
I'll,
sense.
I mean, but spirits going in different bodies doesn't matter what ethnicity that body is, so it doesn't really matter. But
Yeah.
just didn't see that, but I'll take it.
I mean, we all have so many different past lives. It's like amazing to me. A lot of mine this lifetime that I work are Mesoamerican, which makes a ton of sense for me. But yeah, I understand like the surprise. I have had off-planet lifetimes where I'm like, I don't even want to hear about it. Why are you telling me about being an alien? That's not something I care about. Okay. Are you okay if I read this other one? I
Oh,
know
of course.
we're hitting the hour mark.
I'm in a rush.
Okay. So this one is like more of a corally red. Open it up and immediately your young boy, kind of pre-adolescence, probably somewhere between 8 and 12. It does look like it's got an Aladdin feel in terms of like location as well as timing. And there is a little bit of a magical energy to it. And the scene opens up and you're in an open air market and you're kind of an errand boy for a lot of the different vendors that are there. And it looks like your father is a traveling merchant, so you don't necessarily go out with him to travel around. It looks like you stay at home with your mom. It does look like you have 2 older brothers, one of whom that does travel with your dad, and then one that's older than your brother that travels with your dad that kind of stays with your mom when your dad travels as protection, as well as like making sure the household is running. And then it does look like you also have a sister. You are the youngest. And a big part of what you have learned with your dad, as well as your oldest brother, is how to navigate these local relationships and be like an errand boy and help people find the right vendor. And you made a lot of pocket money doing this as well. And like, I'll use pocket money as like an umbrella term because it also looks like it wasn't just like money, it was like food or clothing or like bips and bobs that really gave you this foundation for trading and being a merchant. It immediately pops forward or hops forward, I should say, to about 10 years later, like late teens, early 20s. And here it looks like you've started to go with your father on some of these merchant runs and you're realizing like you're not the nomadic lifestyle you just didn't really enjoy. Like you love the hustle and bustle of being at home. And here I'm using homes or this community to kind of be, it's more urban, I would say, than like other spaces during this time. I would say time frame, my cat just scared me. Time frame probably like 15th century, maybe 14th century is what it looks like. And rather than go and be a traveling merchant like your father or your second older brother, it looks like you wanted to stay local and didn't want to be a vendor. And so you went this completely different avenue that like now it looks like we would probably call like an entrepreneur, where it looks like you took that being an errands boy and like knowing the right stall and vendor to get people to, you really took that and like moved yourself up into creating like this network of communication where you were the person to go to if somebody wanted cacao, like, which I don't think was even available at that point, but you were the person to go to if somebody was looking for silk. People knew that you could find the right vendor. And it looks like as you started to establish this entrepreneurial role or business, you also fell in love. Like this was not an arranged marriage. This was not a marriage of convenience. It looks like there was a group that traveled through and you really hit it off with one of the women. She looks a little bit older than you, maybe like 3 years older than you. And it looks like there was not a proper courtship and she had to kind of move on. And so there's travel that I see that would occur about 3 to 5 years after you had established this like incredible network of how to get unexpected items. And then after that travel and like this geographically extended courtship, it looks like eventually you do get married, you bring her back. It does look like you have 2 children. That is not necessarily of use to where you are now, but I always like to tell people if they had kids. And it looks like it was just like that genuine, true, like when Disney talks about the happily ever after, the being in love, that's what this energy looks like. When I take a step back and I kind of look at, well, why is this an important lifetime to talk about today? First thing I see is recognition in how much you are the center of various communities. And this goes back to that expertise piece. And this goes back to something I saw the first time I met you, which is I'm not sure how aware you are that you are the center of different communities, but you have a lot of connection to different people. And in present time, that serves you so much on the podcast. What you are looking at is what we talked about already, which is like, how do you make that skill into a financially viable business? And you're not ready to do anything with that. So you're kind of just pulling this energy in and reminding yourself as a spirit that you had these lifetimes where like you created massive networks and you were able to support people and help people. Second thing I see is while your present time partner was not your wife in that lifetime, it's a very similar vibration of love that I see between you and your present time partner that you had in that lifetime. And there's something about when things get hard in present time that you'll kind of fall back into that past life vibration, knowing that it mimics the present time one. And it gives like, I hate the word hope. I hate the vibration of hope. It gives belief that things are going to get better. It leans back into potential. It leans back into it is hard in the moment, but it's going to be easier tomorrow. That type of energy. And then the last thing I'll say is your father from that lifetime, I suspect was one of your teachers or professors or mentors when you were younger, and there was karma that you cleared by working with them. Because when I look at that person, I don't see that your father from that past life. I see his energy again in a male body in present time, but not somebody that you're in communication with anymore. And it just looks like by being a student or a mentee of them, it kind of closed that loop without having to reincarnate in a father-son or parent-child relationship again. And it's not that you wouldn't incarnate with this person again. It's more there was some stuff that needed to kind of be cleared between the two of you. And here I'll just define karma as energy stuck somewhere it doesn't belong, neither good nor bad. Questions, things that come up as I share that.
No, I mean, the whole love life part coming through kind of makes perfect sense with things going on lately. And other than that, I mean, I'm trying to think of who the hell that mentor could have been. I have a multiple options, and
I think that's part of
it,
your lifetime is working karma with previous mentors and teachers.
but I mean, yeah, there was a lot of male mentors in this life that shaped who I am to a huge degree, and working with them was a definitely felt like it was something important. But I mean, no, it all lines up. I mean, I'm in sales in my real job, so I mean that makes sense. That I'm good at building networks. I always have been, so that makes perfect sense to me, honestly.
Good. Um, anything we haven't gotten to that you wanted communication on, or any curiosity questions you have, or any areas of life?
Yeah, going through, as some people who watch the show may know, going through, and I'm not going into details, but going into it through a tough family court battle at the moment, and would love some inclination of the energy around that and what it's at right now.
Is it multiple layers or is it just a single set of experiences?
It's one case, but I would say multiple experiences, definitely.
So normally, if we were not doing this live, I'd be asking for people's names, but given the
We
activity,
I
I'll
can gladly do that. I can gladly
okay.
do that after.
Yep. And so I will just use them to describe who you were in this with. Um, First thing I see, a lot of what's going on is not about the actual case. It's not about what is being fought. It's much more about the individuals and the personal vendettas and dynamics that are being played out through a landscape that on the surface probably looks like it makes complete sense to people, but energetically, I will just tell you immediately, like if you were my client, I would be going into greater detail and be asking a lot more questions, and again, we can talk about it off air. But first and foremost, it has nothing to do with what's on paper and everything to do with the personal dynamics. Second thing I see, whoever is overseeing this, whether it's a mediator, a judge, lawyers, whatever, several people are aware that it's a personal vendetta, and whether they know it consciously and they've like come to that conclusion and they're having that conversation, or they know it unconsciously, those individuals, but in particular, I'm assuming there's a judge or a single person at the top, they are actually looking at what's on paper and how to best serve what is actually being brought forward, and being much less concerned about what I would say the theatrics of the storytelling and the he said, she said, what is, excuse me, what is the truth, what is not the truth. Also, just I don't see the people or the persons that you are going up against as having a lot of leverage or even a lot of substantiation. So while I cannot tell the future, what I can say is that when I look at the energy, it looks like it leans in your family's favor, in your family of creation that you are currently creating and have created with your partner. It looks like it leans into the favor of you and that entity. And a big part of that looks like how much unsubstantiated information has come forward and how many claims have come forward without sort of any sort of evidence. And then also, there is something about that personal dynamic that whoever is at the top is, and again, you might not even know who that person is yet, maybe it hasn't actually like gotten in front of them, but their spirit is there overseeing everything. They are very aware that the game that this other individual or individuals are playing, and have very little interest in rewarding bad behavior. So in general, I'm not going to tell the future because we have free will, but I would say it looks quite favorable to your family.
Interesting. Interesting.
And when I
Interesting.
invite you as a spirit to take a step back out of the emotion, you see you see the entire pattern. Like you almost have like this picture of like a crime board in the center of your head, or the sanctuary that is your head, like the sanctuary that is yours. It's almost like you have a crime board of understanding these energetic dynamics and then seeing how they extrapolate into some of the story that's getting created by this other person or individuals. And understanding like how they're doing it and why they're doing it. So there's a part of you that's already knows and sees those dynamics and have been working with them as well as with your guides and your version of God to like really start to clear up some of the karma there.
I know you hate the word, but hopeful. Um, but yeah, that's definitely enlightening and a half right there. And yes, we do know who is at the top, and that actually just recently changed. So
Okay. Yeah. You're hitting a lot of need to be right energy and a lot of what I term narcissistic energy. It does not make anybody a narcissist, but it has all the qualities
mm,
that like traditional narcissists have by the DSM. So I would say that's some of the pattern that you are recognizing and that that person at the top sees very clearly.
we can help. We can help. And you're actually dead on with that $5 million word there.
Yeah.
But yeah, it makes sense. Makes sense.
And I'm also just as we're talking, I don't think I said this before we got started. I'm also just clearing the energy so that not everybody has to wade through the 16 layers to see that this person or these persons are not exactly what they're showing up for, but that they can actually just walk into the room and be like, I know this type of person and they're not different than the stereotype that people have about them. And so just really clearing some energy so that the core of what is being spoken about can actually come back to the center and it not be about personal dynamics, and so that the energy of the actual quote unquote truth as it stands without people's bias can actually be seen by everybody in the room, if that makes
Well,
sense.
it does. It actually really does.
And then also just gave like mini healings to you and your family of creation so that everybody is in their own personal space and grounding for the tiny ones, grounding through whoever they want to ground through.
Well, off the top of my head, there's only one more question I would ask at this point.
Well, let's hear it.
And I'm sure you get this one a lot, but financial energy. I need to know, I need to have an inclination of if it's going to get better.
On the other side of what is going on with the court stuff, it looks like it'll come back into even keel. And then I would say within, if nothing were to change, if you weren't to speed up the timeline, if New Edition wasn't speed up the timeline, if Partner wasn't speed up the timeline, or any of you to push it out, I would say within like 9-ish months, it looks like it'll be back on the trajectory you had expected to have at this point in life. Maybe not quite the number, but the growth that you were expecting at this point. You're working through, as a spirit, you're working through your money stories, and then simultaneously your partner is working through their money stories, and really acknowledging the limitations of some things that everybody is taught about money early on that actually either is no longer relevant to the society we live in as we are in a post-capitalistic society, and or was like never meant to be true. So there's a release, like a lot of the pictures you're letting go of is like holding on to things really tightly because you never know when it's going to come back around, like scarcity pictures. And then what you're inviting in and what New Edition will bring with them, as expensive as they are, will be a lot more of that abundance, appreciation, all the words like I personally don't love, but like all the words that really like re-support present time mindset that like is in constant growth. But again, it's not going to stay where it is right now, and I see that shift within 9 months.
That's a fucking relief. That's a relief, and it's exactly what I felt too, but I just want confirmation, I guess, more than anything. But
Without going into great detail, because I don't know how much detail you want, New Edition is going to bring with them a lot of the change that you've been feeling and a lot of the shifts that you've been feeling. They're going to embody it, and then you're going to have something in the home that you can look at and be like, that's the vibration. To use my language, you might have different language. And there's a huge shift. And it is not, and I get chills as I say this, I don't necessarily believe in coincidences. They happen, but like super rare. The timing of this New Edition and the relationship between your partner, a lot of that is what other people might call divine orchestration, divinely orchestrated, or whatever language. I would say it's very intentional and it was very purposeful. And all the things you have learned, all the quote unquote lessons that you have undergone, I hate that language. This New Edition really elevates the totality of the family of creation up quite a few levels, and things just look like they get easier. Harder to begin with, but easier in the long run.
that's to be expected. But and it's funny. We kind of considered it a divine act too, in a way. I mean, I don't, as you said, I don't, as you know, I'm pretty sure I don't believe in a God, but
Yeah.
I have my own theories on what's out there. So
Yeah.
to be published soon. But
Any other questions? Anything else you have curiosity around?
I just had one. I can't think about it.
In all fairness, you
Uh,
didn't know exactly what you were getting into, so that's fair.
no, I literally just thought of one when after I said the financial thing. I just thought of one that just slipped my. Mm, did it though? Did it? Hmm. I no, it did. What the hell was it? Oh my god! God damn
If
it!
you
The freaking
if you think of it later, you can always message me and I could give you an answer that way.
it's gonna drive me nuts. Um. Oh wait a minute. Wait a minute. Was that it? Oh, actually, this wasn't it. I don't think. But I was once told by a palm reader that I have a very deep lifeline, and that it means I would have a long, long life. And Harley, thank you. That's exactly what your comment kind of goes with. How accurate was she?
When I look at that energy, I mean, again, can't tell the future. I can see what she was looking at. I would define that depth more from a spiritual karmic perspective, where you're working a lot of karma this lifetime and clearing a lot of karma so you can hit higher levels of ascension when you leave the body or in trance. But when I look at your spirit's trajectory, the thing that I see is one, it depends on like, a million factors. But more importantly, you as a spirit have limitations as to what you want to deal with in the body, meaning I don't see any interest in wanting to be in the body with dementia or Alzheimer's. I don't see much interest in wanting to be in the body if you don't have a lot of physical control over it. I see where right now your spirit does not have an anticipated end date, so that could be at any point. But in terms of like, oh, you're going to live to be 105, the time, that particular timeline, I can't give like an exact answer to. But I see,
Of
I
course.
see what the palm reader was reading.
And yeah, I mean oh, okay. That kind of answers the question in a way. There's something I wanted to ask about that, but my memory really is slipping as I get older. Jesus Christ.
It's okay.
Um, but actually, it did make me think of something. It
Yeah,
did make me think of what the question I couldn't think of was.
perfect.
And then I'm sure this is another one you get all the fucking time, but health energy,
What energy?
health energy.
Health energy. So I'm not a medical intuitive. I have not
Obviously, but
noticed and I just have accepted and like I have a philosophical doctorate. I don't have a medical degree. Um as I'm looking at you, nothing is super, super inflamed. I see some energy kind of stored along the lower back. And to me, that just looks like not chronic back pain, but like muscle flare ups is what it looks like. But when I look at you with the intention of like, do I see a cancer spot? Do I see like deep inflammation in the throat? Nothing like pops out at me that has me concerned or would have me offline being like, hey, I really think you should go get this checked out. And yes, I do get that question often. And yes, I have advised people to go see a doctor because I am not a medical professional.
and the energy for my health looks good in the long run for the most part. There's nothing like
Yeah, everything
foreboding.
looks pretty balanced. It looks like not now, but next. So maybe like 6 months from now, I see you coming back into a self reflection of like your body and what you're doing with it and how you want to like move it and these things. But right now, it looks like you're really just anticipating both more sleep and less sleep, and your body looks prepared for that. But no, I don't see anything like out in front of you that has me concerned.
All right. I honestly can't think of any other questions at the moment. I mean, off the top of my head, unless there's something glaring out to you that needs to be said. But
No, I will say your next step color, as I mentioned at the beginning, is actually very much like a fire engine red. You don't have to do anything with that, but that's just a way to kind of identify where your spirit's headed. If you want to do something with it, you absolutely can. You can color, you can paint, you can meditate with it, you can look for it everywhere. Um, but other than that, nothing really jumps out. No. So then last thing I'll do is last thing I do before closing out every reading, which is just filling you in with a giant gold sun. And this sun is just built up of your own limitless energy. Um, I would say you released what I expected you to release, given that we're doing this live. I suspect you'll release more overnight. So I just also showed one of your guides, like to just fill you in when you wake up in the morning, just so that you're not running on depletion. And we'll call that the reading and healing.
Well, folks, it's a first for this show, but you just got to witness a psychic reading for an hour and 15 minutes. So you're welcome. And thank you for deep diving into my life, folks. It's been interesting. And though many of you don't know me personally, I only know one person in the comments that does know me to a personal level to some degree. But damn, there you go. You get to know your host. It's almost like a behind the scenes interview with your host. So there you go. You're welcome. You're welcome. What else can I say?
Love
But
it.
Cyndi, tell them where they can find you if they would like the same thing done.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jeremy. And thank you for having me. And thank you for letting me read you. One thing I get when I do readings is I usually have matches with my clients. I talk about something, I have a similar energy. So thank you, because these are things I would not be looking at otherwise. And for anybody listening that would like to have a session or learn more about it, just go to intothenknown.com and then you can click on sessions. That's going to be the fastest way. And then you can find me on Instagram at energetic ethnographer. But like we discussed last time, that's a mouthful and a lot to write. So we'll put hopefully in the show notes the
Of course,
Instagram link.
of course, of course. And folks, as I go to anticipate more sleep, speaking of which, need sleep. So I will bid you all adieu, and I will see you on. I think I'm off Wednesday, but I'll see you Thursday for another interview. Have a good night.